Today's question, do Christ followers believe in evolution? Hey guys, welcome to Ready, Set, Question. My name is Willie, and I'd like to ask you to support my dedication to you in building a reasonable worldview one question at a time. You can do that by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and joining my team by going to readysetquestion.com/coolstuff. All right, so let's dive in. The age-old question between science and faith, religion and empirical data. So what is a Christian supposed to believe? Do Christ followers believe in evolution? Well, according to a 2017 Gallup poll, 38% of Americans say that they believe humans evolved, but God guided the process. Pew Research says that more than 50% of American Catholics and mainline Protestants believe that humans and other living things have evolved over time. So, do Christ followers believe in evolution? Yes. Some Christ followers do believe in evolution, but we got to ask ourselves, why do some Christ followers believe in evolution? Well, it's because of experts like Richard Dawkins that say evolution is an inescapable fact. And Edward O. Wilson says that each species is a masterpiece of evolution. Bill Nye the Science Guy says biodiversity can be quantified. It is a measure of the results of evolution. And Ernst Marr, he says that most modern biologists consider evolution simply a fact. And Kenneth Miller says evolution is as much as a fact as anything we know in science. Well, the National Academy of Sciences says that the past and continuing occurrence of evolution is a scientific fact. So more than 50% of Americans believe evolution is true because the experts say so. And more than 50% of Americans believe Christianity is true. So some Christ followers believe in evolution because they believe evolution is true. Well, since Jesus claimed to be the truth, and that the truth will set you free, and that anyone on the side of truth listens to him, then truth is of utmost importance to Christ. So Christ followers must accept evolution if it's true. Well, Psalm 119 verse 163 says, I hate and detest falsehood. Proverbs 13:5 says, the righteous hate what is false. Proverbs 30 verse 8 says, keep falsehoods and lies far from me. 1 Timothy 6:20 says, turn away from godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge. So if evolution is false, then Christ followers must reject evolution. Now, at this point, we have to ask two very clear and simple questions. What is evolution? And is evolution true? Well, here's a book that I wrote. It's called What is Evolution? And it dives into the definition, the science, the law, and the evidence in support of evolution. And I go into all of these different topics, and for the sake of time, we are only going to be covering the fossil record and increased genetic complexity in this video. If you'd like to check out my book, you can. It's on Amazon, or you can go to readysetquestion.com and download the first 3 chapters for free, and then decide if you want to buy it. And also, if you buy my book, you really support what I'm doing here on readysetquestion.com and my YouTube channel and my ministry at UCLA and SMC. Any financial help is much appreciated. So thank you very much. All right, let's dive into the idea of what is evolution. I mean, we've got to define our terms, and a lot of the Greek philosophers from back in the olden days say that the beginning of wisdom is the defining of terms. And I take it a little bit further, and I believe that ambiguity is the source of falsehoods. So we need to define our terms right up front. That's why I wrote a book called What is Evolution? So let's dive in. What is evolution? Well, this question produces many answers, and the federally funded Next Generation Science Standards requires evolution to be part of the curriculum, but the Next Generation Science Standards does not offer a definition of evolution. The state-funded California Department of Education requires evolution to be part of the curriculum, but the California Department of Education does not offer a definition of evolution. The second largest school district in the USA, second to the New York Unified School District, Los Angeles Unified School District, requires evolution to be part of the curriculum, and yes, it has also forgotten to define the term. So what about court cases, right? This has been going to court for years and years and years, all the way back to 1925 to the monkey trials, otherwise known as the scope trials, up to our modern day. And guess what? Our legal system has failed to also provide a clear and concise, scientifically agreed upon definition of evolution. So, our educational system, our judicial system, and our scientific community has no agreed upon definition of biological evolution. So, we're back to our original question. What is evolution? There's this idea of a common ancestor, the first single cell, plus natural selection over time, equating bacteria, fish, birds, humans, trees, insects, aka all life. This was the idea that was developed by Charles Darwin himself, but not surprising, Darwin also failed to offer a definition of evolution in his most famous book. Yet the title, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, does give us a good working definition of evolution, because it communicates that evolution is natural selection causing species to emerge. From a common ancestor, of course. Let's recap. We've got a common ancestor plus natural selection over deep time equals all of life's diverse species. But is this true? And when we say, is this true, what we really mean is evolution scientifically true? The National Academy of Sciences describes science as being twofold. Science is the formulation of a conjecture or a hypothesis about the natural world, and the testing of a hypothesis by ascertaining whether deductions derived from the hypothesis are indeed the case in the real world. In essence, science deals with the tangible world of naturally occurring phenomena that can be observed and tested. Most experts claim evolution to be a scientific fact. Yet, when the experts are pressed about evolution meeting the scientific criteria of testing and observation, Richard Dawkins says something along the lines of, well, obviously the vast majority of evolutionary change is invisible to direct eyewitness observation. Bill Nye the Science Guy says stasis is a major characteristic of evolution. And if you don't know what stasis is, it basically means no change. Jerry A. Coyne says we'll never be able to reconstruct how selection created everything. Evolution happened before we were on the scene, and some things will always be unknown. Charles Darwin himself said, whoever is led to believe that species are mutable, changing, will do good service by consciously expressing his conviction. Richard Dawkins says, nobody understands the whole picture, and nobody needs to understand it in order to accept the exquisite plausibility of natural selection. Jerry A. Coyne says, a better title for the origin of species would have been the origin of adaptations. While Darwin did figure out how and why a single species changes over time, largely by natural selection, he never explained how one species splits in two. And Bill Nye the Science Guy says something very scientific here. The missing nature of missing links is actually further proof of evolution. Ouch. Charles Darwin says, why does not every collection of fossil remains afford plain evidence of the gradation and mutation of the forms of life? We meet with no such evidence, and this is the most obvious and forcible of the many objections which may be urged against my theory. Basically, Charles Darwin himself is saying, there's no missing links, and that is really bad for my idea of evolution. Bill Nye is like, we don't have any missing links, but that's good. That supports evolution. So which is it, guys? Although experts are honest about how science cannot validate evolution, they still claim there's a mountain of evidence supporting evolution. So why don't we jump into the fossil record? Well, there's only two kinds of fossils: extinct organisms like dinosaurs and extant organisms like birds and the bees. Extant means you're not extinct, you're still alive, like humans. We're extant organisms. So the fossil record shows that in the distant past, some organisms were thriving and some were going extinct. And today, there are also some organisms that are thriving and some organisms that are going extinct. Environmental pressures, habitat fragmentation, and bottlenecking lead to inbreeding and low genetic variation. Rates of stillborn and deformed offspring increase, causing a trend towards extinction. Extinction is common. In fact, Endangered Species International says that approximately 500 species went extinct in the 20th century. So how does this data line up with evolutionary thought? Well, evolution proposes species to emerge due to environmental pressures, bottlenecking, habitat fragmentation, otherwise known as allopatric speciation. Yet these are the same scientifically observable mechanisms that are causing extinction today. Why would the opposite be true in the unobservable past? The evolutionary claim that new species emerge is contrary to scientific observation. Species are not increasing. Species are going extinct. When it comes to the fossil record, there are only two kinds of fossils. Fossils of organisms that are extinct and fossils of organisms that have defied evolution for eons. Here is a picture of a bird and its fossilized counterpart from a long, long time ago. But birds are probably the only ones, right? Nope, sorry. Sand dollars, nautilus, frogs, ginkgo biloba trees, bats, turtles, dragonflies, bees, coelacanth, cycads, possums or opossums, mosquitoes, crinoids, horseshoe crabs, shrimp, starfish, oak trees, crawdads, crabs, ferns, alligators, and the list goes on, but I think we're running out of time. We don't see natural selection causing diverse species to emerge, not on the fossil record, and not today through empirical science. In fact, the fossil record validates the stasis we see today. And stasis means no change. What about the increased genetic complexity from our first common ancestor all the way up to the most and highly evolved creature on the planet, humans? Let's turn to the field of genetics. This is deoxyribonucleic acid, otherwise known as DNA, and it is the building block for every gene in our bodies. The double helix is like a beautiful twisted ladder with rungs, and the rungs are made up of two pairs. So we have half rungs that join together with another half rung, which creates a base pair. These are very similar to the ones and zeros of a computer program, but far more complicated. We humans have 3.2 billion base pairs. So how does this data line up with evolutionary thought? Well, this is Darwin's tree of life. He placed single-celled organisms way down at the bottom, and we humans, who are the most evolved, way up at the top. Flowers and fish are somewhere in the middle. Well, we humans have 3.2 billion base pairs in our genome. And so we would assume that as we go down the tree of life, the genomes would decrease in their number of base pairs. So we humans have 3.2 billion base pairs. We're way up at the top. Next is a pufferfish with 390 million base pairs. This flower that has no brain, no mobility, has 150 billion base pairs. And this single-celled organism has 670 billion base pairs, which has a genome 200 times bigger than ours. Nothing about Darwin's tree of life makes sense in the light of real data. See, the field of genetics shows that evolution cannot be observed, tested, replicated, nor verified. In fact, the field of genetics devalidates the evolutionary idea of increasing complexity. The experts still claim there's other evidence supporting evolution, and there is. I go into it in my book. If you'd like to learn more about the evidence, I walk through every single line of evidence in my book the same way that I did in this video. I really encourage getting it. It will change the way you view everything about evolutionary science. After reading all of these lines of evidence in my book, we're left with a question. Is evolution scientifically true? Christ's followers must accept evolution if it is true. Yet, if evolution is false, Christ's followers must reject evolution. So do Christ's followers believe in evolution? Not this guy. You know why? Because it doesn't meet the criteria of science. And I hope if you are a Christ follower, you look at the evidence and make a wise decision. And remember, the Bible says we are to hate falsehoods and we are to embrace truth. And so this conversation is not a theological conversation. This conversation is about the truth of evolution's scientific validity or lack thereof. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Ready, Set, Question. Again, my name is Willie, and I am dedicated to helping you build a reasonable worldview one question at a time. Thank you so much for watching the evidence or lack thereof of evolutionary biology. And if there's anything that you disagreed with or you didn't think was clear enough, go ahead and leave a comment in the comments down below. And also, I'm going to put a link to my website where you can download a free sample of my book, What is Evolution? And there's also going to be a link to Amazon where you can purchase the full version. So thank you so much, guys. Much love, Godspeed, like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.